right. Hey guys, I'm here today with William Sampson, speaker, trainer, and certified diversification and inclusion trainer. And so I want to talk to him in the context of business communication, which is a series I've been doing here on my YouTube channel. And we know that communication is vital in influence. If you're going to increase your influence, you've got to work on your communication skills. And what better way than diversity, inclusion, understanding of diversity and inclusion in the workplace? If you're going to communicate with people, you got to recognize there are differences that we all have, and we can celebrate those differences. But really, I'm coming here. I am the student today. I'm coming to William. I'm going to ask some questions and get some definitions. And if you're a small business owner out there and you're considering or you're trying to look at the options and figure out how do I take action and really raise awareness in my organization, lean in, listen to what William has to say. And I know you're going to find some fantastic information that's going to help you out in your decision-making process of what you need to do for your organization. So William, thank you so much for being here. And just out of the gate, tell us what does that mean? Diversity and inclusion, training. What does that mean?
You know, you and I both do work with the DISC method of behavioral analysis. So one of the things that we have worked with for a long time with our clients and we teach and train on is helping people within a team or organization understand one another. You know, we always talk about perspective. And I've shared this analogy with you a number of times in other environments. But the interesting thing is that what we talk about with understanding one another and being able to communicate and connect with one another is all about perspective and valuing other people's perspective, although it may be different from ours. And that's really the basis for diversity and inclusion, is to be able to look at somebody that doesn't look like us, doesn't sound like us, doesn't talk like us, you know, has a different, they don't look like you and me. Whether they're female or whether they're a different race or different sexual persuasion, whatever, they don't look like us. So for us to be able to have to be open to the conversation about, look, it's not right or wrong or good or bad, they're just different. You know, and the analogy that I've used so many times is when we talk about my pen. You know, if we're having a conversation and this is a topic or an issue, and what you're describing is the clip, and what I see is just the black barrel, then I think we're talking about something completely different. So it's about understanding ourselves, understanding who we are, you know, having that self-awareness and emotional intelligence to be able to say, you know what, I'm okay in the skin I'm in, and I'm okay in the skin you're in, whether it's the same or different. So within the context of just, you know, we have different perspectives. If we just will take a breath, you know, like John Maxwell says, just take a chill pill. But to be able to listen to somebody and have a conversation and realize and understand that their opinion is just as valid as yours, or just, again, it's not right or wrong or good or bad, they're just different. You know, and we've talked about this even in the context of teaching our kids that. You know, one of the things that I've had on my LinkedIn profile for a long time is I build better leaders from the bench to the boardroom. So I help that mid-level person that the leadership says, you know what, this person has skill set that we want to develop and we want to train this person. So when that opportunity comes to play, then we can plug them into that opportunity without impacting the result or the performance of our team. Well, and that's really what the diversity and inclusion piece is all about, is making sure that everybody on the team has the same opportunities to get that kind of training, that the company believes in all of their employees. They realize that when an employee comes to them, they really need that diversity, because they're just to take a look at it, and especially when you're dealing with a team where you've got a complex problem. If we've got 5 different viewpoints, or if we have 5 viewpoints that are all the same, you know, we've all got engineering degrees from Texas A&M, and we're gonna attack this. Well, we're looking at it from the same side of the coin.
Mm.
But if we've got people from all over the world that have different thoughts and ideas and backgrounds and perspectives and all this, and we're looking at the team, and we can realize that every opinion is valid, then we have the opportunity to make better decisions. Until we we ask hard questions, we won't get solid answers. And I mean, when you boil it down, it's really pretty simple. The scary part of this is, Congress has been enacting legislation for the last 60 years, trying to bring everybody to parity, and that's helped. But the issue is more internal. It's more an issue of the heart, and having people understand that they don't have to be threatened because somebody's different.
Mm.
And unfortunately, a lot of times we look at somebody that doesn't look like us or doesn't talk like us, and we have these paradigms, and it's all about breaking through that. Is that a good start?
Yeah. So, okay. So when I think about diversity and inclusion, I mean, the specific things are, hey, we're different ethnicities that we're discussing in the workplace. We're talking about different skin tones. We're talking about sexual orientation, all that kind of stuff. Is that the kind of stuff that's
Yeah, most people go straight to race.
Okay.
But it's about racial equality, and that's certainly a component of it. But if we look at it, it's about race, it's color, it's religion, and disability, national origin, gender identification, genetic information, sex, including pregnancy, and then age discrimination. I mean, those are all of it. So what we're really talking about is about everybody having a seat at the table. And that's the title of the workshop that I do. It's called Another Seat at the Table. And so it helps from a business, I'm assuming this is mostly going to be business owners looking at this. So from the business owner's perspective, helping them understand why diversity and inclusion is important. And I referenced a study that Accenture did, and they talked to 1,500 C-level executives in corporations that you're familiar with the names of. And they asked, how do you feel like your company does to make sure that everybody feels like they have access to the same training, the same opportunities, the same everything? Because that's what inclusion's about. And the 98% of the executives said, thumbs up, we're doing a great job. Well, then they go and they start talking to the frontline employees of those same organizations, and only 80% of the frontline employees had the same opinion.
Mm.
So it's almost 20% or 20 percentage points difference in there. So what Accenture labeled that was what they call the perception gap.
Mm.
And they calculated if you could close that gap, that it would bring another $1 trillion a year to the bottom line of business in the United States.
How does closing that gap generate those funds? I missed the connection there.
Well, think about this. When was the last time you washed the rental car before you turned it in?
Yeah. Okay.
To take that analogy and look at people within an organization, if they don't feel like they're included in that organization, they look at that organization as a rental.
Okay.
So if you think about, if I'm working for a company and I go to work and I've got a certain level of effort that we call this line of discretionary effort.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to do to keep my job and to keep getting paid. So I do this amount of money, or do I do this amount of work, show up on time, and they're going to keep me on board.
Yeah.
So over time, you start out really strong because you want to make a good impression. But if you feel like it's a rental, if you don't really feel like they value you, then you're going to see it as a rental. So you're just going to kind of bump along, and over time, you'll kind of go right around that level of contractual obligation. Mm-hmm. Sometimes above it, sometimes below it. You're not going to get fired. They're going to continue to pay you, but you're never going to be fulfilled. So on the other side of the equation, if you feel like you're involved in that company, the company really cares about you, then now all of a sudden your attitude is completely different.
Mhm.
So if I feel like I'm part of something that's bigger, that's what we're all looking for, is to feel like we're part of something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. And when a company values me for who I am, then I'm willing to give more of myself, my
Mm.
time, talent, treasure, I'll work harder. Think about when you've worked for an organization that, if you didn't feel like you were part of the team and you had a deadline, it's Friday afternoon, I got to get this stuff done. And if you don't feel like you're part of the team, you know what? It's Monday. I'll
Yeah.
do it Monday. But if you realize how much other people depend on you, you depend on other people, and you're part of something bigger, then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to get this done before I leave here on Friday, because now it makes my boss's job easier. So when everybody on the team is pulling together, when we're all rowing in the same direction,
Mhm.
then we're more efficient.
Yeah.
So the employee feels better because they feel like they're part of something bigger, and they're more effective at their jobs. They're more productive. Well, if I'm more productive and everybody else on my team is more productive, my entire team is more productive. So this translates into so is the whole company.
Yeah.
So if we can get that culture within an organization where everybody feels like they're part of the team, then it's, we do teamwork, team building exercise all the time, right?
Yeah.
That's what the leadership game is about. That's what our teamwork, 15 laws or 17 laws of teamwork is, training is about. So it's all about making sure that everybody's pulling the same direction.
Yeah. That's good. No, I did a video just released this week on vision buy-in. And so I definitely see what you're talking about with getting the team members to have buy-in, and how much more productivity is going to take place when people are happy and feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. So thanks for making that connection there. Okay,
Yeah.
let me talk about the elephant in the room. Some people would look at us, they see two white, straight, Judeo-Christian background guys in
Yep.
America. We're part of the majority, right? And we're talking about diversity and inclusion. What, do we have any position? Can we speak to diversity and inclusion? I've actually heard that from a person before. How can someone that looks like me speak to something like that? What would you say to some of the critics out there, maybe making that statement with you?
It's all I'm trying to do is bring awareness to the situation. And by having the conversation that frankly is a difficult conversation, we've got to have people. We got to have people that look like us. We have to have people of color. We have to have people with different sexual orientation. We have to have a diverse culture
Mm.
having this conversation. But there's not everybody's willing to step out and say, look, I'm willing to go into an organization and help you affect cultural change by making you aware. So part of there's a half-day workshop that I do, and it talks about we talk about the four different pillars of diversity and inclusion. It
Mhm.
starts with awareness. It's all about, and one of the things I've coached people on all along, and with self-awareness and emotional intelligence, is you can't be aware of something until you're aware of it.
Mm.
And if once you become aware of it, now you have a moral obligation to do something about it.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. Part of the reason that this is going to be more and more important going forward is if we look at the labor force over the next 5 or so years, 75% of the labor force is going to be millennials.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you that my opinion's changed on this the last couple of years, and having honest, open conversations with my daughter. She'll be 28 next month,
Okay.
and she, I've she's opened my eyes to certain biases that I have, because I am, I'm a straight white male. Grew up with I didn't think I grew up with privilege, but certainly, more so than a lot of people in this world. And do I have a right to make people aware of this? Absolutely. In fact, now that I'm aware of it, I have a moral obligation to do something about it.
Mhm.
So just having people start the conversation, but it starts with awareness.
Yeah.
The next part of it is empathy. And we talk about that again, going back to our team building exercises and DISC and helping people work together more effectively on a team, is when we can celebrate, other people's differences. We can stop long enough to have a conversation and listen to the other person to understand, not just to respond, but listen to understand. Then we can develop empathy for somebody else.
Yeah.
Whether they look like us or don't look like us, but in the context of what we're talking about today, especially with people that are different.
Yeah.
And again, not right or wrong or good or bad, it's just different. And when we can kind of take that, I don't know, elephant off of our chest and say, look, okay, yeah, sure, we're different. You and I are different. We're both tall, white, Anglo-Saxon males, but we're different. We approach life different. So anyway, so the ability to develop empathy for other people and just say, look, okay, let's have let me learn to understand what your point of view is.
Yeah.
It goes back to this. If you're talking about this and I don't see that, I have to be willing to listen to understand what you're describing long enough to understand that we're talking about the same thing. It's just been inked that.
Mm-hmm.
The next part of it deals with opportunity. What opportunities are available, and making sure that everybody has the same opportunity. And the last part of it's engagement. And that's really what we're talking about to right now is just how do we engage one another to have this conversation. And we've developed a model that has, we call it the PCIHO model. And basically it's within any time you're trying to affect change within an organization, you're going to have 5 different ways that people will approach that.
Okay.
We call them pioneers, with champions and influencers. And then we have what we call the hesitators and the obstructors.
Mm.
So the pioneers are going to be the one that sees something and says, you know what, that's wrong. We need to go do something about it, and I'm going to take charge. The champions are not going to be the visionaries, but they'll catch the vision pretty quick, and they'll be right behind them. Then the influencers, a little bit further behind, but they're still willing to put their influence behind to bring everybody along. And then you got the hesitators. They're going to be the ones that are on the sitting on the fence. That just kind of develop that wait and see attitude. And then the obstructors, they're the ones that are going to be actively saying, I don't agree with this.
Yeah.
So we and with any type of change, whether it's cultural change or you just got a new policy, everybody in your organization is going to self-identify with one of those. Okay, well, they're taking the Lipton iced tea out of the break room. Well, that's just wrong. Okay, but anytime we have change, people are going to identify with one of those 5.
Yeah.
So then what's that?
I said, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I can see that.
So then we walk them through. Okay, what's the purpose of each one of those roles? What do they serve? What motivates each one of those roles? How do they identify themselves? Like the pioneers, they feel empowered. Okay, we can go get this done. The obstructors, they're just going to think that they're right.
Mm.
So then we look into what's the self-talk of each one of those, and then we talk about what are some change-driven actions that each one of them can think about or hopefully apply to start to affect this change. Because if you think about within an organization, if you've ever worked for an organization and it just didn't feel right, it probably wasn't because you got a letter from HR that said, we just kind of hired you because we needed a warm body. It's likely going to be something that somebody said or did, or something that somebody didn't say or do.
Mm-hmm.
So culture is all about, back up a little bit. you get the CEO of the company comes in and says, we got a new mission, vision, value statement, puts it up on the, on the wall in the boardroom, what changes?
I mean, there's a new thing on the wall. It doesn't mean anything changes unless people buy in and we start taking action and are held accountable to those actions.
Nothing changes. It's like the story that John talks about with the 4 frogs sitting on a log, 5 frogs sitting on a log, 4 decide to jump off. How many are left?
5.
5, because there's a huge difference between deciding and doing.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this, William. Small business owner, 50 to 400 employees, depending on the industry, right? They're humming along, they're doing well. They don't have any issues coming into HR. They don't have some massive training and onboarding process that, includes diversity and inclusion training. And they're like, you know what? I don't want to stir anything up by bringing in diversity and inclusion training. I'd rather just not rock the boat, not talk about it, because I know that probably I'm going to have a few of those obstructors and it's going to stir things up. And if I just don't talk about it, then because we don't currently have a problem here, there's no problem. I mean, because I could see a lot of people saying that and drawing that conclusion, just saying, we're just not going to talk about it. I don't want to bring it up. What would you say to those small business owners? What's the upside? What's the downside? How could you have empathy for them and maybe help them kind of understand why they should do something like this?
Yeah, there's a couple of thoughts wrapped around that. I actually just got off a presentation with Patrick Lencioni, and he was talking about the motivation for leaders. And one being responsibility, that they want to be leaders because they felt a responsibility to lead and bring people along. And the other one was that people were reward driven, that they did it because of the position and power that they got. And he talked about 5 key areas that reward driven leaders they tend to shun or they tend to avoid. And he calls them the sins of omission. It's just those things, the difficult parts of their job that they don't like to do. And this will certainly fit into it, and I'm going to reference Covey here in a minute. But the 5 things that he talked about was, A, they don't like to have hard, uncomfortable conversations. And I've been through 2 books in the last, just recently. I think one was called Critical Candor, and the other is called
Crucial Conversations.
Fierce Conversations was the other one. What was Kim Scott?
I don't know.
But the interestingly enough, they're both authors. Their last name is Scott, and I don't know if I don't think they're related, but so they don't like to have hard or difficult conversations. They don't like to manage their direct reports. They said they tend to say, I hired smart people. They're grown-ups. They can do it on their own. I don't want to micromanage. Well, if you're not, making sure that you're valued, that they're all, that what they're working on, that all your teams are aligned, going in the same direction, and coaching your employees. If you call that micromanaging, get out of leadership. The third one was they didn't like to run or hold meetings, and they didn't like to do team building, and they didn't like to repeat themselves. Well, when Lencioni talks about it in his book, The Advantage, talking about the CRO, Chief Repeating Officer, like Kelly from Southwest Airlines, he's complete every time. He's hammering that message. This is our why. This is why we take care of our employees. This is why we take care of our customers. So yeah, sometimes, like I said earlier, sometimes you ask scary questions, you get scary answers. But here's the downside to not doing that. When I go to Covey's matrix on the 7 habits of highly effective people, about the important versus urgent.
Yes.
Most of the time we tend to focus on what's urgent, whether it's important or not.
Yeah.
And so ultimately what we'd like to do is just completely get rid of the things that are not important. So then we tend to focus on what's important and urgent. Well, diversity and inclusion is one of those things that is important, but doesn't necessarily feel like it's urgent. So the things that are important but not urgent, that's you working on your business, not in your business. Those
Okay.
are those, that's that planning, that's those things that have to, that are, again, they're important, but they're just not, they're not in your face right now.
Yeah.
And I'd submit to you that if this topic becomes important and urgent, then it's too late.
Yeah.
So
You probably have a lawsuit or a complaint ahead
yeah,
of
absolutely. I mean, the last thing, I spent 15 years in the financial planning world, and we always said we don't want to make our clients famous, as in Samson versus the United States government. So Railhead Barbecue, and I'll pick on Pete Guerin's place, but Railhead Barbecue versus the state of Texas.
Yeah. So let me ask you, as it relates to, you've kind of shared kind of what you talk about in your training. And as I was reflecting on our conversation that we're going to have here today, and like I said, my limited experience, I've worked for some big corporations and had the diversity training. Now we're talking 15 years ago. So I've been in small businesses or family-owned businesses or my own business for the last 15 years or so. And so a lot of my context is, related to like-minded thinking people, right? Everybody kind of thinks the same, does the same similar background, and goes through life the same. But as I was thinking about this whole training, it reminded me of a conversation I remember vividly. I don't know how old I was, 10 years old, probably. I remember I was in elementary school, and I remember sitting on the couch in our living room and a family member sharing a story. And part of their story included the skin color of the person, of a couple characters in the story. And when the story was over, my mom made the point and said, what did the skin tone of the person in the story have to do with the story at all?
Right.
And the person thought, and well, I don't know. I just, I don't know. I just that's how I told the story. And my mom said, if it has no bearing in the story, it's not worth mentioning. It doesn't matter what the skin tone of a person was if it doesn't matter, right? Am I making sense? I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely.
Let me say this way. I'm kind of fumbling my way through this because, right, this is family talk. These are stories. These are ways that we were raised, and what you're doing when you're having these diversity and inclusion talks. I mean, you're going real deep with people into how they're raised, how they view the world. So all that to say, I'm grateful for my mom who said, don't make issue out of the differences that we have unless it has some sort of bearing on the story at all. Right. And then number two, the whole thing of treat people how you want to be treated, and with respect, with love, with care. So with those two things in mind, if we all were taught that and did that, would we still need diversity and inclusion training, or am I missing the mark? Because I want to understand.
It's, again, what you're achieving at this point in the conversation is awareness.
Okay.
And awareness is just the start of it. It's the first of the four pillars of making cultural change. Because again, we can't be aware of something until we're aware of it. And then once we're aware of it, now we have the moral obligation to do something about it. And that's what we talk about bias, where based on, and I've got a thing on my whiteboard here, we talk about perspective, and the different things that make up our perspective. And one of those is just our story, the way we were raised. Mm-hmm. Most likely the person that was telling that story told that story, including the skin tone of the person, because that's the way the story was told to them. Mm-hmm. So we all have things that have been handed down to us that we just accept because it came from mom or dad or grandpa or whatever. And that's part of what we as white males need to understand, is that we have a different take on the world just because of the color of our skin. Mm-hmm. And I've got lots of friends that are that are black that And they talk about the conversations that they have to have with their kids when they have, run-ins with law enforcement or just in shopping or stores, or the people are just that are ignorant to this, that don't have any awareness, that again are just doing the things the way they were raised,
Mm-hmm.
because this has never been brought to their attention.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, most people haven't had this brought to their attention to even have the awareness. So that's what I'm doing is helping people at least begin to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Now, are there things that I don't understand because I've never been in that situation? Absolutely, and I will be the first to admit it. I mean, I will never understand, what goes through the heart and mind of a black person when they get stopped by a police officer. I'll just never know, because I can't be in that situation. But can I have empathy to listen to their story and help tell other people about that story so that it impacts other people's opinion and helps them to develop awareness? Absolutely, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, and I know your training style. We have a similar training style where we incorporate a lot of group discussion. So the great thing about that is that people in our training styles, they get an opportunity to share their story. They get an opportunity to help others understand where they're coming from, what their experience has been, and to then people can better understand what it's like to walk in their shoes and have empathy. I think that was your second step for the people that are across the table from. Now, I know that you have been in sales, you've been an advisor, financial advisor. You know how to talk to people, you know how to connect with people. This is something you've been doing for years. This isn't new to you. I love what John says with the 101% rule. Find the one thing that we have in common with the person across the table from us and give it 100% of our energy and effort.
Right.
So in your training, do those types of skill sets play a part in what you're training folks? Give us an idea of what are some tips or some actions that the regular Joe trying to get better in their awareness, in their behavior in the workplace, what can they do to better navigate and do well with diversity and inclusion, be an inclusive person and celebrate the diversity?
Periodically you see on social media people say, if you had one superpower and you could get rid of one thing in this world that would make it better, what would that be? And I always come up with the word selfishness. When we can give up our need to be right, or our need to put our opinion on someone else, and stop and listen. Again, I go back to listen to understand, not to respond, and to develop empathy for somebody who's different. That's the best first step, and because at that point, that's when you start to develop awareness about the differences between two people, and you can have that conversation. If you'll take your need to be right out of it and your need to tell this other person, it's like something I saw on social media earlier today. You've got a white person that's a Black Lives Matter person that's screaming at a black Trump supporter across they're face to face. It's like, wait a second, what's wrong with this picture? Why do I have what gives me the right to tell somebody else how they should feel? Well, you don't have that right. What you have is the obligation to listen to that person and find out how they feel.
Yeah.
And if we can come to any conversation and both have that heart or that thought process, then there's not a problem in this world we can't solve. If we could sit down across the table and just have that open, honest conversation and try to find out what the other person feels. Because, even between you and I, that's going to be different.
So, okay. So let me let me ask you some more about diversity and inclusion. Let's say I bring you into my organization, and people share their background and their beliefs and their way of thinking, and am I obligated now, if I don't carry those same beliefs, am I obligated to put my stamp on approval if they have an alternative lifestyle that is not the lifestyle that I want to live? Do I have to approve of those things, or do I just have to accept them and say, hey, that's good for you, but it doesn't work for me? I think that's another barrier that business owners, once again, you open up that can of worms, and now do I have to go against, maybe a religious conviction that I have that someone else doesn't have? Do I have to now validate their belief, or do I say, I'm happy for you and that works for you and your family, and I move on? Where's that line, and what is acceptable in the business world, right? Because that's
a point that we have to all get to, is not cramming our opinions down other people's throats.
Okay.
They're going to be different.
Okay.
Whether it's a lifestyle or whatever it is, that I'm okay in the skin I'm in, and if you're okay in the skin you're in, then and we can have a conversation about it without trying to make the other person believe what I believe, but just say that it's okay to agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, in this world today, we've kind of lost the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Because we've dug in our heels and say, I'm right, and because I'm right, you have to be wrong.
Yeah.
That's not true at all. And it's, you talked about your parents growing up and teaching us to treat other people the way we want to be treated. And then John talks about the platinum rule, treating other people the way they want to be treated. That's what we're talking about. If I understand how you want to be treated, and I understand, what your concerns and fears and are, and I don't have to make sure I say this the right way, because I don't want it to be misinterpreted. It doesn't have to change the way I am for you to be okay the way you are. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what diversity is.
That's good. So it's a celebration of the differences, and
God made us all, man, and He made us all different. And you know what? And I know that there's some hardline people in some religious communities that would say it's my obligation to change those people, and they're digging in their heels, and sometimes they tend to be just angry because they want to be the arbiter of what's right and wrong. And I'm of the opinion that it's my job as this child of God to love everybody and let Him sort it out later.
Yeah.
And that's not going to fly with everybody in the religious community, but I think that's where we need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Well, what kind of parting thoughts? What didn't I ask you that I should have asked you? You mentioned the platinum rule that John has. Treat people how they want to be treated. To do that, you really have to take the time to listen to people and learn and ask questions about their life and their background. Have we lost some of that? Have we lost the ability just to have healthy, robust conversations with people that are different than us? I mean, what's your take on that?
I'm of the opinion that the answer to that is yes. And we see it on the TV and the news, every single day, about two people that are, standing there with bullhorns shouting at each other from 2 feet away. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing happening there. There's no communication going on there.
Yeah.
If you took those two people out of that, and part of it within those situations is that crowd mentality, because people will do things, in a crowd that they would never do, just one-on-one. Yeah. So if we take those people, if we could take them out of that situation and sit them down in a room, sit them down in a room with a couple of beers. And a bowl of chips, queso, and some guac. and just have and let them have a conversation, we'd find that there's a lot more that unites us than that which divides us.
Yeah.
And I fully believe that our media is not our friend in terms of helping this situation get better. It's just not. You know, we know that John's been working down in Ellis County here for the last probably 2 years or so with the roundtable discussions. And I had conversation with a lady who runs a business. So, well, the lady you referred me to that runs the business association, Cami, and she's been involved in that, and she's you know, so she's aware of it. And it's all about just taking people out of the noise, out of the squelch that we're surrounded with, and sitting down around a table. And with this particular, you know, thing, they have an agenda of what they go through and what they talk about, but it's all about helping people just get to raw humanity.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, my tagline is I build better humans, and part of that is, you know what, just shut up and listen for a minute. You know, again, give up your desire or need to be right, and develop a spirit or a heart of learning and understanding. I've said this for years, even before I started working on the diversity inclusion piece. You know, we're just working with team building and the DISC pieces, was that, you know, if we could understand each other, develop some empathy for people that are different from us, and sit around a table and have a conversation, there's not a problem in this world that we can't solve.
Yeah.
But it's turning off all the noise. It's turning off all the outside.
Yeah.
So I would say that any business owner that, you know, if they've got more than 10 or 20 employees, they're willing to have the conversation, because we know that there are people that are going to listen to this and go, you know what, I don't care, I'm just fine the way I am. And there's a certain percentage of the population that we're just not going to reach. But that doesn't mean that we can't keep telling the story. In fact, I have an obligation to tell the story.
Yeah. Because
you never know where somebody's going to hear something and go, you know what, maybe what I believed is not correct. You know, we talk about the coaching process in taking those pre-programmed thoughts and ideas in our subconscious that just drive what we do. You know, most bias and implicit bias and cultural bias and all that kind of stuff are programs that we just operate on. It's on autopilot. Yeah. So it's a matter of pulling that program out and interrogating that thought, and then refining that thought and putting the new thought back in there. You know, we think about the idea of if you've ever had a coach, you know, when you play golf or tennis or something like that, and you want to change your swing, you go to a coach and they say, well, you know, I see why you're slicing the ball or you're hitting your backhand to the left. And they go through and they show you how it should be done. They show you how you're doing it, and you practice a few strokes, and then you get out and you play with your group that afternoon, and you still play the way you did. It's because that's the way you're programmed. That's the way you're wired. It's not that you don't want to change or the change isn't in your best interest. But too often we understand, we have this idea that an intellectual insight is change, and it's not. It could be, and it should be, and it would be if we did something different. So how do you rebuild that swing? You take it down to its component parts, and you start rebuilding it little by little by little. And that's what change within an organization, within cultural change, is all about. Is first you're aware of it. Now you know what to be aware of. Now you have the obligation to change that. So once you start putting those things back in place, then we can have the conversations with our employees and our team. It's got to start from the top down.
That's good.
You know, we're all interdependent. So it's dependent upon the employees. It's dependent upon our peers, our leadership, our customers, our suppliers, our stockholders. Everybody's got a part in this. but I believe that it's got to start with leadership that says this is important, because one of the things that we know is um, that employees have to understand that they want to know that their company believes in this, and they want the same, they want the best for everyone, they want the same for everyone, and that's what will make them an employer of choice. Big companies are working on this all the time, working on it hard. You know, we look at trying to think the word I was thinking of. Anyway, I just thought went flying out the window. It'll come back.
Well, let me say this. I think, you know, what you were saying about the various, you know, having these conversations is it's challenging to be challenged. It's hard to for our thinking or our experiences to be viewed and looked at, and us to maybe have a wrong way of looking at things, or an incomplete, as you mentioned earlier with the pen, an incomplete way of looking at things. And even to look back, as I mentioned earlier, family teachings, family trainings, and to maybe say, hey, how I was taught in my home growing up, that really wasn't that wasn't an empathetic way of thinking about things. That wasn't a way that is inclusive or diverse. And you know, that doesn't mean that we don't love parents, grandparents, great grandparents, and all that kind of stuff, and we're grateful for the positive contributions they made. But I'm a parent, you're a parent. We want our kids to have better thinking than us, right? We want our parents to do better than us. I mean, we want our kids, excuse me. We want our kids to stand on our shoulders. And the same thing is true with our parents. Our parents want us to be better and think better and treat people better than they did, and learn and grow from experiences and get better. And so I think being able to detach yourself from that and being willing to be challenged, which is not easy, and have the tough conversations. I'm telling you, it's easier to just avoid it, you know, and to say, I just don't, I want to pretend like it's not happening and it's going to go away, but it doesn't go away. And there are changes that need to be made, and they're going to be made in our country. You know, we got an American audience, and in America, part of what the country is built on is a more perfect union, right? This country is far from perfect, because it's filled with imperfect people. But that doesn't mean we don't strive for, we don't work towards trying to better ourselves, trying to better how we think, how we approach things, how we approach different people. And we're constantly learning. I remember a story from John Maxwell, a mentor, both of ours, that years ago when he moved to Atlanta, he said, I want to meet with all various Black leaders from different from business world, from education, from the church world, which is John's background prior to being in the business world. And he said, I want to buy them all lunch, and I want us to get together. And they all got to lunch, and they got together, and they, you know, had the pleasantries and nice to meet you, and they're eating their food. And they said, okay, John, now what are you going to teach us? He said, I'm not going to teach you anything. I'm here to ask questions. This is not the forum for me to teach. This is the forum for me to learn. And that's always stuck with me, that is the posture in issues like this. and particularly the time in our country where these issues aren't new, but there's times and seasons where things flow to the surface, and we've got to address them. And I think if we take that posture of learning, and we jump in there, and we call you, William, and we say, hey, I want you to come into my company. I want you to teach my people. I want us to get better. And as the business owner, you need to be sitting in the front row of that training, or virtually. I'm assuming you could do this virtually, right, as well?
Yeah, virtually
or in person. Absolutely. So social distanced, of course, and you can deliver this training, and you as the business owner need to be the one in that posture of, I'm here to learn, I'm here to grow, I'm here to understand. and we're all going to get better, and we're going to have those tough conversations so that we can have greater unity. Ultimately, that's what we're looking for, is that there can be unity within our diversity. We can have that common goal that we're moving towards, that we're going towards, that whether it's an organization, a company, a nonprofit, a country, right, that we are working towards something together, and it's that thing that we have in common that we're locking arms and we're moving towards together. And so I love it. I love what you're doing.
Think about, and I'll be the first to admit, I don't have the answers.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers. What my job is I feel like I'm a catalyst.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm like that little grain of sand that's not turning into a pearl. I'm a disruptor.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple of things to think of, because I know we're starting to run down on time.
Yeah.
The Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. We're still having the same conversation 60 years later.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is, we got work to do. And I go back to Einstein's quote, and I use this all the time for lots of reasons, but it says, we'll never solve problems at the same level of thought that got us here in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're just ginning along thinking everything's fine, it may be right now, but you go back to the urgent versus important thing. If this may not be urgent right now, but it is important.
Yeah.
And if it becomes urgent, then you're behind the 8 ball. So if you're a visionary leader, then you need to be addressing this with your organization.
That's good.
Just period. Because now that we've made you aware, you know what to be aware of. And now that you're aware, you have a moral obligation to do something about it.
That's fantastic. And so how can small business owners contact you? How can they get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
Cell phone number, 972-849-9557. My email address, william@wkspeaker.com. Find me on LinkedIn, find me on Facebook. I'm not great on Twitter or Instagram or that other stuff, but Facebook and LinkedIn, I'm pretty easy to find. You see my picture over my shoulder. I'm always looking over my shoulder, making sure I'm staying true to what I'm supposed to do.
I love it. I love it. I'll make sure that the links to connect with you are in the description below. And William, thank you so much for sharing and helping me better understand diversity and inclusion. I hope there are other business owners out there that have a new perspective. And I'm sure that we're going to have some people reaching out to you to get some training for their team members so they can become better and get a workforce that has more buy-in with the company, like we mentioned at the start. So thank you so much, William, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
2 things to leave you with. First of all, it's the right thing to do. But second of all, when everybody's on the team feels like they're pulling together in the same direction, your company's just going to be more profitable.
That's right.
So
it's good. I love it.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Drew. I appreciate it. It was great.
I'll talk to you soon.
If you found value from this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. To receive the free influence assessment, simply click on the link below that says Influence Assessment. If you have any questions or comments about influence, please comment below and I will look forward to connecting with you. Always remember, increase your influence, realize your dream.